Good morning, everyone. Welcome to NAB again. It's been a long year. We've been working on a lot of technology, so I'll get into it because we've got a bit of quite a lot to show. So the big thing we've been working on over the last year is a big generation jump in technology. We felt like that a lot of our customers are getting bigger, and they started quite small, but they're getting really large. I mean, really quite big companies. So they were struggling to do some of the larger work they're doing. So we felt like what we needed to do was follow through with a huge technology jump, which we've done, and part of that is also 8K. But there's a lot of other technologies and features with that. So the first product that I'll show is the new Hyperdeck Extreme 8K HDR. So what we did is, there's a couple of reasons we built this product, but the big one obviously is going to 8K was a big thing. But we wanted a touchscreen Hyperdeck, and the Hyperdeck studio models we have now are only 1 rack unit. So they're nice and small, and that's really good, but they don't give you space to really do a lot of control panel plays. We want to do archiving. And I feel like the archiving systems services have taken over around the world, but they're really not tapping into all this historical content that each country has, and each country's got its own culture. So we felt like we just needed to go a bit further and allow each country to kind of pull back its archive and get it easily into a modern file-based format, and that would give you the ability to get everyone's local culture onto these streaming services. So the control panel here, if you notice, it's very laid out, very similar to a broadcast deck, because we actually can control broadcast decks for this. So I'll go through some of the features, because there is other technology jumps in this product as well. That's the unit itself, so it comes as a separate Hyperdeck and controller. You can see down here we've got the 2 Hyperdecks in 1 rack, where you can mount them with the controller. You can see obviously it's 8K, so it does extremely high resolution, and it does all the way from SD all the way up through to 8K. There you go. Now, the other thing we've been doing with the Hyperdeck is we're using H.265 in 8K, and as you can tell, it's giving us some extremely low data rates. So we've got the ability to, what we wanted to do is record 8K on the file format that didn't take up a lot of space, so 8K became cheaper in some ways than doing Ultra HD. So that was one of the things that it can do. So we're recording real time. That's actually all H.265 files playing there into the switcher. You can see it's a touchscreen interface. We've got some dedicated buttons down the left-hand side. And you can see we've also got a headphone socket on the front. And we've got the controller. When you add the controller, you're basically now adding the traditional broadcast controls. And if you look at it, this jog knob here is a serious, it's got an electronic clutch in it. So you can hear it clicking. And then when you hit jog, it moves freely, and then we've got position. You don't really need vary speed on a modern device, so we've got vary speed, so we can move up and down the timeline really quickly. That jog knob is really high quality, so it's got a nice, I just showed the electronic clutch and everything. And all these buttons are all broadcast style buttons. So the aesthetic is very common to what broadcast decks were like, in the 90s. And a lot of the controls are really designed to give you control over a broadcast deck because it's RS422. So if you look at the back panel, you can see we've got quad-link 12G SDI in and out. We've got a whole bunch of analog on it for the archiving, so we've got 4 channels of balanced audio. You could use Betacam SP. We've got timecode inputs, so you can record timecode from older decks as well. But there's also component composite and even hi-fi amps, so you can bring content pretty much off anything that's old. Obviously we've got HDMI in it as well, and you can see there's also an external disk connection and Ethernet. Now, what this lets you do is you can put in and out points on the front panel. You can change between the player and recorder, put in and out points on there, and it'll go off and do a capture from the deck, so then whoever's doing this can just leave that unit to do that. So you could put one of these devices under each one of the old decks and just go run through them all, and one operator can run up and down all the different decks and keep them all recording. And if you put a Teranex Express in between the line, from between the older broadcast composite deck and this, you can even upconvert to a different frame rate, like say progressive 24 HD. It'll edit across the frame rates as well, so it'll do all that. It uses CFast cards, so it does the same thing the other Hyperdecks do. it records from one CFast card to the other as they fill up. You can just keep changing the cards out. But what it also does, and you noticed on the back shot there was an external disk connection. We've got a new multi-dock, but you can plug an external drive in, and you can then record to the disk externally. So it handles the internal CFast cards as well as the external ones. And in this case, you've got the ability to get SSDs in the multi-dock, so we can record to those. You can interchange between the HyperDeck Studio range we have and the HyperDeck Extreme. And also on the front panel, there's a third media button. When you push it, you can manage all the media. So you can decide which disk on the multi-dock you want. So you can have the 2 disks internally, as well as the 4 disks externally. Now the other interesting thing about this, it's got a cache. So it uses one of those PCI Express hard disks, or flash drive disks that modern laptops have. And if the user puts that in, they just open the plate up on the bottom. If they put that in, then if the media fills up, or if the media isn't fast enough, it'll record to the cache. And so it becomes even more foolproof. And what's interesting, like we recorded 8K on a mechanical hard disk, because the cache just took the data, and when we stopped recording, it just kept dumping it out to a mechanical USB hard disk. You know, it gives it basically much more fault tolerance, which is what you need, because these are used in live production, so you want to make sure that it keeps recording, even if the media has a problem. It's got built-in scopes, so in the scope menu up here, you can bring up various scopes, and as you can see in the picture, we've got waveform, parade, histogram, vector. And also, when you run HDR modes, it's a very cool change to HDR scopes. And you can see that you can, it's a great combination to use it on, it's a great field recorder with, like as you can see we're using it here. I mean, it really is quite flexible because it's small enough to use portably. Particularly, I've got one rack mounted here, but if you had it separate, put it in a different photo there, that's that one. And the other good thing about it is it's 10G Ethernet. So again, it's another one of the technology jumps. So if you're using it for digital signage, you can have it hidden up the back. We uploaded a 5-minute 8K file, and it took 5 seconds. And we just uploaded through FTP, as you can see. The FTP transfer is about 400 megabytes a second. That's because the CFast card speed limitation, it actually does much higher than that through the Ethernet, so it's very, very quick. We've got different languages in it. We've got all the main languages that we cover. I won't go through them all, but you can just select that on the menu on the front, and the whole device changes over to different languages as well. So it'll be 495 for the HyperDeck Extreme, and it'll be available in June. We've got a bit more QA to do. We didn't quite get it done for the show. And the controller will ship at the same time for 1295. And as I talked about, we've got the new Blackmagic Multi-Dock 10G. That's a USB-C version of the multi-dock. Now, what's nice about this is it's got 2 channels on it. So you can have all 4 discs on one channel, or you can have 2 discs on one channel and 2 discs on the other channel. So if you mount it above the HyperDeck, you can have 2 channels, 2 discs on this channel HyperDeck, and then 2 discs on that HyperDeck. So that's how you can get the interchange between other HyperDecks, just by adding SSD capability if you want. And then you can see it there, mounted above the HyperDeck. So it matches quite nicely. That's why the new ones are the same colour as the one below. That'll be the same price as the old one, which is the Thunderbolt 2 version, I think, which is $595. Now, to match the whole 8K workflow, we built an 8K switcher. In fact, we actually didn't really build an 8K switcher. What we did is we built a switcher that was so big that we could combine all the features together to make it do 8K. So we felt like if we just, we needed to build a bigger switcher. All of our customers needed a bigger switcher. So we felt, like 40 inputs is pretty good, and it's got 24 12G outputs. Each input's got a standards converter. It's got 4 DVEs. We felt like if we just went a little bit bigger, and we had 4 of everything, then we could combine it all together and have 1 of everything in Ultra HD. In 8K, sorry. So it's got 4 Ultra HD DVEs. It's got 16 advanced keys, which is advanced camera keys. It's got 4 separate multi-viewers, Ultra HD multi-viewers. It's 4 ME obviously, but when you make it run in 8K, when you switch to 8K, now it's a 1 ME switcher with 1 8K DVE, 4 8K upstream keys, 1 8K multi-view, and that's an 8K multi-view. So what you're seeing there is an 8K output, and so that switch is running in 8K. So it's extremely powerful. Really good for big jobs. Obviously 40 inputs is huge, and there's 24 outputs. So when that goes to 8K, you get now 6 to 8K outputs. And there's a lot more sources inside the switch now that you have, so they're more powerful than the old outputs used to be. You can see the design it's a new design. We designed it a little bit to allow TV studio customers to come up, because a lot of the big customers have said that they actually started out with their original TV studio switchers. So a lot of the design aesthetic is sort of somewhat similar. You can see on the control panel at the front, Now on a big switcher like this, most people will be like, I'll never operate that from the front of the switcher. But if you're setting up or you've got some emergency happening, it's nice to be able to walk up to the front of the switcher and be able to operate it. So we still actually retain the control panel on the front, and it's somewhat similar to the way the TV Studio panel operates. If someone came up into it, they'd understand it. You can see the back panel there, so you've got all those inputs on the left-hand side and the outputs on the right, which won't go out. You can see the multi-view on the very right-hand side, and then there's some analog. But on the left-hand side, what's interesting is we've got 2 NAB out, which means all 30 inputs, 4 channels of all 30 inputs, the first 30 inputs coming out actually bus out. So if you want to get an audio mixing guy to take all the audio from you, you can actually provide all your audio to him. But there's a MADI input as well. It's got a 156 channel audio mixer built in. So we can actually have a separate MADI input which will feed the extra audio. So you can actually expand out and actually do all the audio mixing inside as well. So you can see we've got 4 multi-views there. There's 4 Ultra HD multi-views. And the multi-views now up to 16. So I've got the standard configuration that ATEM uses. But each quadrant can actually have 4. So you can have up to 16 views on each multi-view. And the multi-view sources can even be outputs inside the switcher as well as sources coming in. So you can have almost anything coming up in the multi-view. We've got the DVE, as I mentioned, there's a DVE in there, and also there's 2 super source. So when you're running an Ultra HD, you get 2 super source. When you're running 8K, you still get 1 super source with 4 8K DVEs in that. So you've kind of got 5 DVEs when you're running an 8K in some ways. And you can see there's another good shot of the multi-views and the control panels. So you can use it with a bigger panel. Now the talkback is a little similar to what we do traditionally, but it's a 4-pin headset on the front, and we actually have 2 talkback loops, one for engineering, one for program. And it also is compatible. There's a connector on the back to connect to ClearCom and the other talkback systems, so it does integrate into traditional talkback systems, as well as the way we do it, which we just put down the unused audio channels for SDI. So they both work together. In fact, it also integrates. In fact, we're using both here, so some of the guys on the floor have the standard talkback system, and we're using a Constellation, ATEM Constellation switcher for this, for the stream we're doing. Now the other interesting thing, this has got such a giant audio mixer, 156 channel fairlight audio mixer, and every input has dynamics, like compressor, limiter, noise gate, expander, and it's also got 6-bit parametric EQ. We have done some extra software to allow the fairlight console to control the audio mixer in the switcher. So you can see the picture there. That's I'm not sure what size that console is, but if you build out the console, if you had 2 5-bay consoles fully populated, there's still not enough faders to actually control the audio mixer that's inside that switcher. It's so big. And the talkback mic and the analog input and the media plates all go into that audio mixer as well. So it's really big. It's the biggest audio mixer that's ever been in it. It's a great thing about owning and being part of an audio company, is the guys all like, we're really gung-ho about doing this, and it's become a little bit over the top, but it's really exciting. So it's pretty cool. So for the Fairlight console now, you can sell it to, like we can sell it to DaVinci systems or now the ATEM systems as well. We've obviously got the software control panel, which gets a bit unwieldy when you've got such a big switcher. We've got hardware panels and current control panels and all the other panels. They all work with this switcher as well. So it's actually available now, and it's $99.95, which is a monster of a switcher for that. It's amazing, really, when you think about it. So to do monitoring, we needed to do a new Terranex Mini SDI to HDMI 8K, but it's a little bit more than what we've traditionally done before. It's not just a simple converter. You notice the design, it's a bit different. It's basically half rack width, and we have these Terranex Mini converters where you can bolt on a little small panel with a screen and everything. On these half rack width ones, the screens come built in by default. But when you look at the back of it, you see it's got a quad link in and it's also got a quad out, which is the way the TVs currently are. You can set up one here, and that's the way they currently are. And it'll take interleaved or tiled inputs and convert that depending on what the television needs. And you can also run a HD or Ultra HD television or down convert. But what gets really exciting is we've got scopes built into it. So you can put 2 on-screen scopes, and they're independent of each other, so you can select which scope it is and you can blend them over the top of the background. And that's pretty nice if you're running, say, color grading. If you're using this with a Decklink 8K Pro, say with DaVinci, it's a really nice monitoring solution to have the scopes built in there. Because if you're running 8K on a computer doing DaVinci, you really want all the processing power to be using for color grading and color nodes. So having the scopes offload. Well, it turns out, of course, DaVinci's got new scopes that are GPU accelerated. So we kind of did this at exactly the wrong time, but it is nice to just offload everything and have the external converter do that work for you. That way the computer's doing all this work for processing. And you can see we've also got monitor calibration built in. So there's a couple of different probes you can buy, third-party just off-the-shelf probes. The information's on our website, but if you plug it into the front, this converter is actually running Blackmagic OS, which is the original OS that we developed for the cameras, but it's now running everything. And it now takes charge of the probe, and it'll bring up some test signals. You can see there's a test signal that's being shown there, and then you can set the monitor contrast and brightness, then it'll run through. It'll build a 3D lookup table. It's got a 33-point 3D lookup tables in it. It'll build that lookup table based on calibrating the monitor, and you can actually save that lookup table out and load it into other monitors if you want. So you can actually get access to that lookup table. It's not like secret hidden calibration. It's just using 3D light, which means you can grab it, pass it around, or someone could give you a light if they needed to for a specific brand monitor. That would be fine. So there's also a rack mount kit. The same rack mount kit for Terrence Minis works with these. It's got a slightly different plate, so you can fill in the gap. The same rack mounting kit works for Terrence Minis. And you see, as I mentioned, it's a fantastic solution for monitoring when you're using DaVinci Resolve. You need a colour-accurate, colour-grading monitor. It's got the calibration, the lookup tables, the scopes, all that built in, so it really is a good solution for that. So that'll be available in a month or so. There'll be more QA to do on it, 1295 for that. So now we're going to get DaVinci Resolve, which is the next big thing we're doing. So DaVinci Resolve, it's a bit of an interesting, obviously you've seen the banner on the wall saying a revolution in editing, and we've been looking at editing as a process. About a year ago, I was looking at some training videos that people were doing, and the training was showing how they were getting clips in the bin and they were putting labeling them, naming them, all sort of stuff. And I'm thinking, that's not the way people used to edit. When I was working in post-production, mostly TV commercials, a bit of programming work, that's not the way editors used to do it. They used to throw everything in the timeline and chop all the stuff out they didn't want, and that was just the way they did it. So I kind of just had this feeling that editing software had evolved over time in a very sort of similar way, and everyone did it the same way. So in some ways it was very capable, but I didn't feel like it was fast. It was sort of almost in some ways slowing down. The more capability, the more keyframes, all these other things you could do in there. It just sort of felt like there was a speed limit. And I looked at it from a manufacturing point of view. We do manufacturing quite well. And so there's principles in that. Manufacturing has a real bad reputation in pop culture because it's like, oh, what a dirt job. But in manufacturing, modern good manufacturing, everyone works together to try and eliminate waste. And waste is anything you do that doesn't result in any purpose, like it's not productive. So every movement, everything you do that isn't productive is actually considered waste. And what you do is you hunt down waste and bottlenecks and other things, but you hunt down waste and eliminate it. So that way the work that people do is productive and you don't find you're just wasting half your time. And if you look at editing, when you watch someone actually edit, all I see is waste. I see clicking and scrolling and all these things that thousands of clips in a bin, they're going to move around everywhere. It looks really wasteful. So I thought, what happens if we applied that culture to editing? Well, the problem is that edit page is a certain culture. It's about capability. It's got everything in it people need. It's a lot of stuff that everyone's done. We're good boys in the edit page, right? We put everything everyone wants. There's a whole lot of more stuff in the edit page when you see it, but how did we make it fast? So I thought, well, what we need is a new page. So we have a new page called the cut page, and it's been specifically designed for speed. So while we've got capability in the edit page, the cut page is all about speed. The great thing is that we can do this because DaVinci has separate pages. They're different cultures. Like you've got a colorist who uses the color page. Doesn't care about the audio page, but an audio engineer uses the audio page. And then the whole thing collaborates because the same software collaborates against each other. So what that means is that you don't start being just an editor because you can become a bit of a colorist if you want. And people drift between the pages as they find they like something. They might dabble in it, they drift in, and that's nice. It means there's no shells or anything that define you as a demographic and you've just got to be an editor and that's who you are. But DaVinci can drift around a bit. The problem is there's almost two cultures in editing. There's one culture that wants to go faster, and there's another culture that kind of, you're doing long form work and you've got to get it perfectly right and you want a huge amount of finessing and capability. So the cut page is all about speed, and the main rule of the cut page is everything has to do something. Everything has to be an action, so there's no waste, or eliminate waste. Also, the cut page has to be intelligent. You don't have to tell it every single thing. It's trying to work out, I know what you want. Okay, I'll do that for you. You've always got to undo. So that's okay. And the other thing the cut page needs to have is the controls need to be obvious. You need to be there, so you can just click on it. You don't have to go through a sub-menu. Everything has to be immediate. So that was kind of the culture for the cut page. So what I'll do is I'll pop over here and show you. I'm not a demo guy, so I'm probably going to make it all go horribly wrong, but I'll come over and I'll show you how it works. So I'm on the cut page at the moment, as you can see. We can bring the cut page up on the screens. people can see, there it is. So you can see it's quite different. If I go to the edit page, you can see there's a lot more on here. If I go to the cut page, it's a bit simpler. Now on the top left here is the bin. Now I can click, and I've still got titles and transitions and effects. But I've also got some buttons I don't need. It's designed to work on a smaller monitor. I don't actually have to go. I can actually do everything on one page, because if often people are cutting, they're doing it on set, they're doing a TV commercial, they actually want to do a quick cut on set and see how it looks. And so they're really actually doing it in small laptops and things. So we wanted a page that was able to handle that. So a lot of things were done on here too. Eliminate wasted space. So I can bring in the media directly from here. And if I go to desktop, there's my clips. I've got them in here, and it'll bring the folder structure in. But I can bring in clips in here. And as I move up and down, I can click and go between just with this menu. So I don't have that tab panel down the left-hand side, so I'm not wasting space. Also, I'll create a timeline to make sure I can do something. Now, if I go into the folder here, you can see there's a bit of a path here. Now, I can see my clips here, and I can open them up. But I can also see list view. But there is new tools in here, and I've got a new clip view as well. So I can see icon view, clip view. I've got a bunch of clips here. These are actually the clips that are running on the hyperdeck. So they're all the same length, and I think there's about an hour of footage total here. So I'm not really using probably 20 clips of what I'm going to show, but so there I go there. So once you've got these clips, I can drag them all down to the timeline here, and you notice there's a dual timeline. Now this is one of the problems that we had. We've got these contextual tools, and when you move around the edit point, the tools change, and it's really nice. The problem is you've got to zoom in to a certain level to be able to get enough control to do it. And then you want to see where you are, so you've got to zoom back out again and see, oh, okay, now I know where I am. Well, then this, you've got both at once. So what it means, I've got a full timeline. This is the full edit at the top, and at the bottom I have a zoomed-in portion of it that I can do my work. And they totally work. Like if you move a clip down, you can see it moves around. It just changes between. I can pop things down in the gaps, add a clip. I can even trim in here. This is a real, because the clips are end to end, but you can trim in here. This is a real live timeline. It's not just a fancy looking scroll bar, it actually does things. I can move a clip down here, if I go down here, I can move this clip up here, drag it all the way down, and drop it down the end of the edit, and there it is there. I can go in and trim, but I can also trim obviously in here, here. So you can see how you can move things around, and also I've got trimming. So what I'll do is I'll bleed everything out of here, and show you the trimming works. So I've got a multi-cam shoot here, so let me go to a wide shot. Here it is here. So you can see that the scroll bar looks quite different. And again, it's another thing to try and improve the speed and efficiency. So you can scroll up and down the scroll bar, and you've got all the audio there. We've also got the in and out points marked in here. So you can click an in point and drag it down, and you can see the audio. But also I can scratch trim. Looks like on this build, now the audio's not showing, whereas it was showing 10 minutes ago. So there's a problem with the beta build. What should happen when I'm scratching, you should actually see a zoomed in version of the audio waveform, so you can mark your endpoint against the audio track. So the great thing about having the audio in here is it's drawing the audio as you're trimming. So I've got absolute trimming by just moving the in and out buttons, and I can still use trim in and out, in and out points. The problem if you've got a really long clip is it's each pixel is like dozens of frames of movement. So to get really accurate trimming, I mean, you can throw everything in the timeline, chop out the stuff you don't want, as you can see. But what about the other way? Actually getting the bits you want and dropping down into the timeline. And that's also really important. And that's a bit rough. It's very hard. Analysts don't do that well, because you need accurate trimming in the viewer here to be able to do that. And that's where the scratch trimming, if I have this scratch trimming, see, I can scratch. Doesn't matter how long the clip is, that's moving the same amount. It's a shame that the audio's not drawing. So I can get that in and out point just right. And I can scratch. And that's a browser relative thing, so it's not actually on SD. So I've got a track there now. I can drop that into the timeline, and that's my face on it.
Pretty much put.
So you can see I can do some quite good trimming up in the viewer now, and then put the clips down. Now I could, put another clip in there. I mean, a good example is if I want to. Well, let's pretend these are actually an edit where I've edited a bunch of, I've shot a bunch of stuff over time. These are really different camera views of the same edit, but I can go on here and mark, so I can do in, out, and So you can see that it doesn't switch to the timeline every time I do an edit, so I can just basically keep dropping shots down. So I can move along here until I see something interesting and drop it down. And it's much faster because it's almost like throwing rocks off a bridge. You know, you just keep throwing the shots down into the timeline. I mean, edit software on the edit page, it will switch to the timeline when you finish an edit, so you can preview it. But if you want to go fast, when you want to just scroll down and look for stuff that's interesting, just go drop, 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 and it's done. I mean, if you know, this is obviously mainly designed for TV commercial editors and high-end editors like that, but if you look at it, guys are doing news work now, they're actually making programming out of the news work, they need to cut quickly. Even the high-end YouTube guys, if you've got the YouTube guys, right, they're pumping out 3 or 4 15-minute programs a day from a hotel room, and they've shot it themselves and presented to it. They've got extremely tough editing deadlines. I think this is why we need to come up with a whole new way of editing. No one's got the time. People just don't have the time to spend hours on this anymore. So there's a couple more powerful things. If I want to talk about the intelligence of some of these things, if I'm at the edit point here, and I see I'm not actually on the edit point, if I mark a clip in and out here, and I basically insert that, I've got a smart insert. When I insert that, I'll know that this is the edit point that I want to go into, and I'll just put it in there for me. So it's not going to wait for me to do that. So you can see this is the kind of stuff that they can do. So let me show you the next set of features. I'll go back to that line shot. Where is that? It's here. You drop that in. So what we've also done is, the great thing about this multi-camera job is I've got a whole bunch of cutaways. So let's go into this cutaway here. The one of the things we want to deal with is the problem with multicam. It's really powerful, but if you've got a 40-minute job, you've got to basically wait 40 minutes for it. Not only that, when you see something, because it's kind of like switching, you sometimes want to get in before some action happens, but with multicam, again, you're kind of lagging behind the action. So what we want to do is a way of building up multicams without needing the time taken to watch the program through. So what I have here is I've done the base track, which is the wide shot, and I've added the front and back off it. And now I can go along and look at one of the other camera views, and I can look along there and find any shots that I like. So let me just find this a bit here where she's doing the chili. Here. So there's a shot of her cutting some chili. Now all I have to do is hit the source override button. And what that'll do is it'll add the clip on top and match frame it to the single clip in the timeline and create the cutaway for me. So now when she starts cutting,
yes, they look amazing.
Yes,
so they're quite beautiful.
So the nice thing about that is if I go back to the clip, I can pretty much just go down and look for anything that's interesting, like that. I can mark it in and out on it. I don't just do source override. I just keep going down looking for anything interesting. There's something. That looks nice. Source override. What else have we got? She's doing something there. In mind, I might scratch the implant a bit to see if I can get it. The outline. And, whoops, I lost my incline. I screwed it up. There it is. And then source override. So I can just keep dropping all the cutaways in. Then I go to the next view and I can drop a bunch of cutaways from that and then do it again and layer them up. I've also got another feature in here. Say if you want a nice close-up there, I can go to the same shot and then match frame it, put it in, and I'll put a little bit of duration on it. And I can do a close-up. Now what this does is lets me do a close-up of the same shot. If I use the tools here, I've got a bunch of tools here for position, cropping, stabilization, all those tools are in there. I can now move that shot a little bit and zoom it slightly. And I've got a close-up.
I'll reverse over the prawn heads over here, then I'll pop them into a hot pan, and then...
And I've got that, so this lets me go and shoot with a single camera, and just go along and just go drop. I could have shown you on the timeline by putting in our points, but there's actually a bug in that, so I shouldn't have mentioned that. But you can match frame the clip, and then just drop it from the clip. Because it actually works in a very similar way to how the source override does. It's trying to be intelligent, it's trying to do stuff, extra stuff for you. So unless you put an in and out point in, and then it goes, okay, what you're trying to do isn't what I want, you can do that, but the whole idea is to try and make it intelligent so it does things faster for you. Now that's all nice. The problem is, again, we looked at the situation of editing, and the thing that really frustrates us is the bin. We've got all these clips, it's all chopped up, and that's the way stuff. You could have hundreds or thousands of clips. In linear editing, we didn't have to worry about that. In linear editing, we had...
Attention all exhibitors.
That's nice.
The show floor will officially open in 30 minutes.
And And we could
Once
basically
again,
have all our shots on the
attention
tape.
exhibitors,
We shouldn't have to do that
the
once
show
again, did you?
floor will officially open
So in
in 30
linear editing,
minutes.
we lost that when we went to non-linear editing. The thing about non-linear editing, the reason it was great is because it was instant. When you did an edit, it was instantaneous. With mechanical editing, you had to have multiple decks, and it was all slow because the machines were slow. But we actually lost some stuff. What we lost was the fact that all our clips were on one tape. So what we've done is we've got a button called source tape. And when you click on it, it takes everything in your bin and puts it in one long list, or one long bar. And now I can scroll up and down all my shots. And if I can go into the bin order and change the view, so I can change the sort order, and it'll rebuild the source tape for me. And I can go along here. So I can, say if I want to build an edit up, and this is multiple camera views of the same stuff. But say I wanted to do, I've shot someone rebuilding a motorbike engine, and I've been shooting it all day, and they're finished, but I could have hundreds of shots as they're doing different bits. What I'll do is I'll delete everything. And you could do a source tape. And I can just go along here and say, okay, I want this bit, that bit, and add it. I want that bit, add it. And I'm just going along all my media here. I want that. And I just sort by time code order. So I want that. I just basically go along and find all the shots that I like. And again, because it's a source tape, this is where the scratch trimming is really important, because I can't get the shots quite accurately lined in and out points because it's an over an hour media. If I go down here, you can see there's literally an hour of media here. So and that could get really built up because it gets everything in the bin and puts it in there. So what you can do is, this is where the scratch trimming tool is, because I can find exactly the spot I want. And then I can get that in there and I can drop it down in using that. So you can see how I can just build up a timeline of pieces. So it's very, very fast using that. And again, if I go to an edit point, I can now trim around the bottom here because I've got all the direct trimming, all the tools are here. I've got the, I can trim in, trim out. One thing I've also got on the edit page, you've got to change to a slip. You don't have to do that in here. If I scroll here, I've got this little slip tool and I can slip directly in here. I can also move the edit points backwards and forwards. And while I'm doing that, I can also do it here. See, I will do that here. And I can also do it up here. If you want really frame accurate trimming, then we actually have 3 simultaneous trimmers all live at the same time. And I can move up here and I can do the trimming here as well. And you get a frame count as you move it around. And I can trim there. See, I've got all that control. And no matter where I'm trimming, it works. And I can even nudge. But you can see how fast the source tape lets me just throw down shots and just assemble something really fast. So you don't have to sort of throw everything in time and chop it all up. The source tape lets you do it. And as I'm scrolling the source tape, it remembers where it is. You move along, and it actually highlights the clips as I'm scrolling along. So you can see I've got that. Yeah. As I'm going. So you can see there's a lot of tools here. And also the other thing is if I want to do some transitions, I can just click on it, put it dissolving, or click and turn it off. There's these transition switching here. So I can turn off things on and off. And there's also a smooth cut transition here as well. So if you're doing an interview and you've got a bunch of jump cuts, because you're presenting and you've had to chop a bit out, the smooth cuts in here, so you can just apply that and actually blends out. These are dissimilar shots, so it looks wacky, but that might be cool if you want to do something crazy. And again, you can change all these durations here. So you've got all, and you can see this will always fit the transition in here, so it'll multiply up the number of frames, but the adjustments are always frame accurate. So you can see how powerful this can be. And I think it's really fast, and there's a bunch of more edit point modes and things in there. And then when you want to deliver, all the pages in DaVinci now have a delivery window, so you don't pick up the deliver page, and you can upload to YouTube directly from the account. If you've got your account data, you can render out and directly upload, or it'll render out. So that's nice, but we felt we could go a little bit further. I mean, as you can see, it's a bit like another edit culture, but then we thought there's kind of another edit culture that people haven't seen for a long time. It's linear editing directly. And in linear editing, we used to have a keyboard. So if we can switch back to the slides on the screens. So we've developed a keyboard for DaVinci Resolve. So this is really funny. It's all metal. It uses key switches from esports keyboards. It's got a beautiful controller on it with clutch. It's USB. But what it lets you do is it lets you operate the editor from, like, when you're using a mouse, it's like you're only using one hand. Then you can use both hands. You can have the left hand doing all the selection of edits, the right hand can be doing clip location. So it's actually even faster again. It's almost like we joke about the third edit page, but it's a mechanical device. So We've got the standard QWERTY keyboard, but there is some enhancements that we've added. So it's almost DaVinci's traditional keyboard with just a few tweaks on it. And then we have the right-hand side, you can see there's a beautiful search dial. And then you've got, above that, you've got 3 search modes. And above that, you've got the source tape and the timeline, so you can switch between the two. The source tape becomes really important from the keyboard. In fact, I thought of the idea from the keyboard thinking, and then we realised that it's great in the UI. Oh, by the way, there's on the right-hand side, there's also timecode entry keypads. So we've got cool things like frame, timecode, switching, so you can type things in frame count versus timecode. A double 0 button, so you don't have to type in 000, so that's great. Even all the key switches are rated for over 1 million hits. The clutch, it's funny, if you run the keyboard from USB 3.1, there's not actually enough power to run the clutch in the search dial. So we have a bunch of super caps in the keyboard that charge up to let you run the clutch, even if you're running a lower USB. But most things are USB-C these days. On the left-hand side is where you do all the transition control. So you can see how there's similarities with the transitions on the cut page and here. Because on a keyboard, you don't want to have to do 3-point editing to do a 3-point edit. You want to be able to put the in and out point on with source clip, but you don't want to have to go to the timeline and put another in point. That's slow. So that's why you've got smart insert. It goes, oh, that's the edit point you want. I think that's where you want it. I'll put it in there. And same thing, with the pen to end, that's easy. But the source override, some of these other functions close up, you just, you run up and down the timeline and add them. That's why, if they can be intelligent, you can operate just again a bit faster. It's all about efficiency. We just keep measuring how long it takes to do things. That can eliminate stuff you don't need to do. There's a nice big in and out button. There's some trim controls, and then below that is the transition switching. So what I'll do, and there's one there that we're seeing, it's on the front of the desk. Looks fantastic with an iMac Pro. It's just, just really fits together well. And it's got a lip around it, so you can actually set it in the desk. So you can see you can have it perfectly flat in the desk, because you can actually insert it. So I've got one under here, so I'll plug one in, I'll make some space for myself. And I'll show you quickly before, I've got one more thing after this, but so here's the keyboard. So these are prototypes, but you can see the colour palette of the keys has been set up to be much more modern feeling. There's the search dial there. You can operate with your right hand on this side and your left hand on this side. So it's all metal, and it's going to be very repairable. We want to have, this has actually got a metal bumper on the front. The real one will actually be rubberized. We want to be able to replace that. Same with keycap sets. This is designed to be long-term. People use it 12 hours a day, so we've also thought about repairability with it. Replacement key switches, keycap sets, all these sorts of parts we'll have available. But I'll plug it in and I'll show you quickly. It's a bit hard for you to see down there, but I'll show you how it works. So I plugged it in, and what happened is the jog button above the search dial got shut off, which is all very normal.